Hey, welcome back. I'm Jude, and today we're going to explore the skills and the understanding we need to prepare mentally for a competition or any type of high-stress event. Now, I got inspired to do this video because I am actually a big mixed martial arts fan, and I also love jiu-jitsu. I actually trained jiu-jitsu for a while, and I hope to get back to training again soon. And then one day on YouTube, I stumbled across this documentary called Daisy Fresh, an American Jiu-Jitsu story. And it follows around this group of jiu-jitsu grapplers who just train so incredibly hard. The intensity at which these guys train is just completely insane. It's very inspiring, and it's just crazy to watch. So I see these guys training day in, day out, as hard as possible, always going 100%, and then it's time for them to compete, and then they're full of nerves, they're kind of psyching themselves out, and they don't perform up to par. And here I am watching, I always want to yell at the screen. I'm like, you guys train jiu-jitsu so hard. You go so hard grappling, but you're not at all training your mental game. And you can train your mental game too. And if you took the time, even just 15 minutes a day to train your mental game, it'll absolutely improve your performance in competition. Now, sure, there's all sorts of kind of stock advice around how to train your mental game. But instead of just giving a few tools, I want to really help you understand the paradigm, how this all works, so you can start training in a way that makes sense for you. Now, what I mean by this is that we all get good at things in different ways. So in this instance, we're talking about jiu-jitsu. You'll see people do similar moves or have similar game plans, but they'll do them all in their own unique ways. Everyone finds their own unique style that they make work for them. And it's the exact same thing with training our mind, where if we really take the time to explore, we can find our own unique strengths and then apply those in a way that really maximizes our results. So this is why I want to give you a paradigm, so you can understand what you're training, how you're training it, what your options are for training, and then find the tools, the exercises, the practices that really work for you that you can integrate into your training routine, into your everyday life. So the first thing we're going to start is about a theory of stress, looking at how it comes up and what we can do about it. So in psychotherapy, we have this thing that's called the window of tolerance. It signifies the amount of stress we can be with, that we can be present with, before it turns into distress. So the thing is, there is actually healthy stress and unhealthy stress. When you think about working out, getting strong, or getting fit, you're actually stressing your muscles, you're stressing your heart. But when you do it and don't overdo it, it's actually healthy. You get stronger as a result, and then over time you can perform better and better. So by stressing your muscles by lifting weights or stressing your heart from jogging, these things actually get stronger. But you know that if you overdo it, there's diminishing returns, or it can actually have a negative impact. So healthy stress is actually called eustress. It's the stress that builds resilience. And the same thing is actually true with general stress. So let's say we have this window of tolerance and you're good with the stress up here. Like a few days before competition, you actually find that level of stress motivating. It's actually helpful to keep you alert and focused. But then at competition time, it goes up into the distress level where it starts to wear you out. Now you can do two things here. One is you can start to bring your stress level down. You can use breathing techniques. You can use certain focusing techniques to bring your stress level down in real time. But what I think is more important than that, the smarter approach, is to actually open up your window of tolerance, to improve your resiliency so that the stress that used to turn into distress is actually totally manageable, not a problem at all. So this is what we're doing in meditation actually, is we're training to be with discomfort, to be more open to it, and to not be so reactive to discomfort or any type of uncomfortable experience. This is why meditators get really great results when they go on long retreats, because that's when you're really face to face with the discomfort, when there's no escape, and when you really have to open to it and you have to improve your equanimity. So if there's one core idea I want you to understand here and take away from this video, it is the concept of equanimity, because this is going to be the thing that you can utilize to open up your window of tolerance, to be able to handle stress in a way that isn't so stressful anymore. So I made a whole video on equanimity here that gets way more into detail than I'm going to go now. I would highly recommend that. But now I'll just explain it quickly. Equanimity is our ability to be open to experience, to not contract around experience, but to be okay with what's happening. We're not trying to make anything happen. We're not grasping at anything. We're not trying to create something, but we're also not pushing anything away. We're not rejecting it. We're just calmly abiding in whatever's happening in the moment. Our equanimity really gets tested in uncomfortable situations when we're feeling discomfort in our body. So stress is a good example of the discomfort. When we feel a lot of stress, we almost react to it as if it's a threat. And when there's a threat, our body goes into a fight or flight type thing. So there's the original stress of what's happening, and then there's this reaction of, I don't like this stress is a threat, and that amplifies the stress. It creates this negative feedback loop. So there's a certain level of stress that is unavoidable. There's a certain level of stress that's going to be there, and we want to be more okay with that and not make it any bigger, not try to resist it or escape it, because those things just tend to amplify it. So I've seen some advice going around like doing these mental tricks to trick yourself as if you don't care about the outcome of the competition. You're essentially lying to yourself mentally to try to make it like it's not a big deal what's happening. But the reality is you unconsciously know what a big deal it is. So instead of denying to yourself what a big deal this is and how much it matters to you, you instead acknowledge that and just let yourself know it's okay. It's okay that this matters. It's okay that you're nervous. It's okay that you might not perform up to the best of your ability. You just have to accept that inner reality. And a lot of us don't want to accept that. We would rather make up these kind of fake realities in our head because they're more comforting. But they're not really more comforting, because deep down we know what really matters. So the first thing is just acknowledging the reality of the situation. And when we do that, we can stop fighting with that reality. Now, again, this is something we train. And as you train more, you're going to get better and better. You're going to see results more as you go. And there are so many ways to train equanimity. But if you're training for a specific reason, let's say competing, then you want to train in a way that is relevant to that. So I'm going to do a short guided practice at the end that is really going to show you how you can train in this way. But I also have a general guided meditation on cultivating equanimity, which I'll also link to. So a general way of becoming more equanimous with stress is to demystify stress. So when we're getting ready for the competition and we feel that stress, we want to be really curious about the sensations of that stress. Whatever is not in our full awareness has more power over us. When we bring something into full awareness, it may be more intense, we may feel it more, but we are no longer so much at the mercy of it. We gain more freedom from it. And this may not be true immediately, but when practiced, it's absolutely true. So if stress is the thing that you want to be more equanimous with, you have to look, what is happening internally? What is the experience of stress? How are you feeling that in your body? So I always start with the body because I feel like the mind can be so chaotic, so easy to lose yourself in. The body is a lot more clear. And coming into our body sensations can be very grounding. So this will be the practice at the end of the video, but I'm going to talk about a few more strategies and important factors before the practice. So I'm basically saying that the best way to deal with stress is actually to bring it more into awareness and become more okay with it. And that actually builds our equanimity muscle or a sense of resilience around stress. But sometimes going into it is just too much. We're getting overwhelmed, and it can be really great to shift away and to focus on something more grounding. So I have a distress management practice, all meditation techniques that you can use to manage your distress. I'll link to it. And that practice experientially goes over some strategies, and you can find what works for you. You want to have both of these tools in your toolkit. You want to be able to be more clear and equanimous with stress as it's arising, but then also shift your focus to something that's more grounding. Different practices are going to work at different times in different situations. So the more you can understand and the more tools you have in your tool belt, the better equipped you're going to be. And so these skills are meant to be practiced every day, or at least regularly. If you're saving these until you start a competition, that's like not practicing for the competition until you get there. It doesn't make any sense at all. And the great thing about these practices, these skills, is that you can implement them while you're practicing in your discipline. Sure, it's going to be really powerful to do like a silent seated meditation like we're going to do at the end and to really hone these skills. But once you get a taste, the flavor of them, you can integrate them into literally any experience in your life. And so there's no limit to how much you can practice these throughout the day because you don't need time to practice. You can overlay them onto any experience. The hardest thing is to just remember to practice them in the first place. So you can set up reminders around your house. I used to have a little Buddha statue on my desk that would remind me to just check in with myself, do these types of practices. And if you're serious about competition and these types of practices, I would highly recommend that you set up reminders, either a ding sound on your phone or things around your living space or your training space that remind you to do these practices. The other thing we're going to explore in the practice is how we could get into that zone of top performance, how we can get there before we even start competing. And again, there's lots of ways to do this, but I give a really direct way in the practice. And now lastly, before getting into the practice, I just want to mention that your psychological state, the psychological backdrop to your life, is going to be hugely important here. So you can think about the sense of self-compassion. Now, if your self-compassion or feeling of self-worth is riding on your performance, that's going to be a lot of extra stress. If you can condition yourself or have some sort of a lifestyle where you know you'll be okay even if you don't perform well, that's going to be ideal. That's going to take a lot of the pressure off. The more you have riding on your performance, the harder it's going to be. And I know that there's a certain degree that's unavoidable here. If you're a professional, there's going to be a lot riding on your performance. You can't change that. But having other things in your life that you care about, having a sense of identity, a sense of self that isn't directly connected to your performance is so huge. This is, of course, a much larger piece, but if you really believe that who you are is how well you perform, then that's something to really examine, because that's actually hindering you from performing in the best way. Taking time off to really explore who you are outside of competition, outside of performance, is going to be good for your performance. Just having that more balanced life and sense of self is going to take a lot of pressure off, which is going to allow you to perform better, to get in a better sense of flow. Okay, with that being said, we can jump right into the practice. Now, this practice is guided in a relatively quick way to give you the techniques, the skills to look at, but I really hope that you will take the elements of what I'm about to lead and implement this into your day-to-day practices, and ideally a focused meditation practice as well. Okay, so let's go. You can start by closing your eyes if that's comfortable. And just take a few deep breaths. On the inhale, stretch up, feel your spine nice and long. On the exhale, relax, soften your shoulders. And so meditation practice is always the balance of these two principles. This alertness, the sense of alert presence, and the sense of ease, of allowing everything to be just as it is. So see if you can find this balance of awake alertness and ease, just this relaxed, calm abiding, not trying to change anything in this moment. And now imagine yourself getting ready for competition or for whatever that stressful event is that you want to practice for. So bring to mind the time that you find most stressful, the time where your nerves are really going wild. And just notice, where do you feel that? Where does that stress show up in your body? And now if it's too much, you want to go to a grounding practice, one of those distress management practices. But if it's not too much, we're going to keep going. And just be really curious about the sensations of stress. See if you can zoom in on them, bringing them more into clarity, almost like you're turning up the resolution, like you're looking at them in HD. Where are they coming from? Where's the center? Where are they expanding out of? And then where are their edges? How far do they extend in your body? Sometimes they may even feel like they extend outside of your body. So we're just bringing this stress, these nerves into awareness without trying to change it at all. That's the key. And we're just sitting and we're welcoming the sensations. Almost like welcoming them with an open heart. You could even allow yourself to smile a bit. Smiling is this trick that kind of calms us. It tells our nervous system that we're safe, because people don't usually smile when they're in danger. So bring a light smile to your face, and bring a light smile to your heart, to the rest of your body. And you're meeting your nerves, your stress with a smile. You're telling your body that there's nothing to fear about stress. That this stress is totally okay to feel. And you're breathing in and feeling a natural expansion, a softness. Often with stress, our body wants to contract. And so we're doing our best to soften, to not contract, to feel expansive. You can even imagine the feeling of stress expanding outside your body. Because our body wants to contract around it, it's often doing this on a subtle level, even if we're not aware. So letting it expand naturally can have this nice effect of softening the natural contraction that happens. Letting the stress run through our body unobstructed. You can even imagine that the vibrational quality of the stress is massaging you. So see if you can actually almost enjoy the feeling of the vibration of stress. It might be a stretch, but tune in. See if you can let go of any negative connotation you have with stress and to just feel it. Not as something good, not as something bad, but just as a vibration. So this is us building equanimity with the stress. We're really welcoming it. But the other thing we can look at are thoughts. So what kind of thoughts do you typically have when it's time to compete in these high stress events? And you can bring those to mind right now and just notice the patterns of the thoughts. There are certain themes that emerge. If you imagine yourself victorious or you imagine the worst case scenario. And here you have a lot of options. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to feed the thoughts that are unhelpful, that are amplifying the stress. Instead, we want to find thoughts that are a bit more soothing, but that we can get into, that we're not really forcing. So one technique we can use is you can imagine yourself in the process of your discipline and doing really well. That's a classic visualization. So not that you're on the podium with your hand raised. That's a result-oriented thought. But instead we want it to be this action-oriented feeling. We want to evoke this feeling of doing well. Maybe you've watched basketball and you've seen when somebody hits a few shots in a row, they get on fire and they can't miss. It's like this feeling runs through their whole body of I did it, I'm doing good. And that feeling of I did it, I'm doing good makes them better. It helps them really zone in and focus. So can you think of a time, can you think of an instance that you were really in that flow, that you were really doing well, and evoke that. Evoke the memory and the feeling of being really in the zone, performing to your top potential. And we want to do our best to embody this feeling. Allow your posture to open up as if you're in that zone. You want to stay relaxed when practicing. But you also want to evoke that feeling of really nailing it, of really being in your space, and letting all that stress be there. Again, we're not trying to get rid of the stress. We're showing ourselves that we can feel stress, we can feel anxiety, and we can still perform at a top level. That those two things are not against each other. Stress is natural. It's not the threat we make it out to be. We just can't let it get to that runaway point where it turns into distress. So breathing now. Deeply into the belly. And the belly breath itself is a great technique. Often when we're stressed, our breathing gets irregular and rapid. And so by softening our breath, by slowing it down, We can soothe our nervous system, calm our nerves a bit. Often people win themselves before they even enter competition just from the stress and their breath getting out of control. So we really want to keep a nice, slow, smooth breath. And this is something else you can practice. It's just a nice, long, gentle breath. And then noticing the feeling of stress. Maybe you don't feel any right now, but just imagining it's there so you can prep for the time it is there. And we're really just trying to feel more and more okay for stress to be there, making it less and less of a threat. And then coming back to this space of really feeling in our own, really trusting that we're okay in this moment. And just breathing. You can open your eyes. All right, how did you find that? So I just gave some very basic techniques here, but like I said, I'm going to give more in future videos. Plus, I did a recent video that talks about some breathing techniques you can use that are very effective. So I'd highly recommend checking out that. I'll link. But it's just really important to really drive home this feeling of equanimity and to try to cultivate equanimity throughout the day. So noticing when you're uncomfortable or feeling stressed and welcoming those sensations, not trying to close down around them or avoid them, but to actually sort of befriend them. And that's really the key to developing equanimity. And that is what will widen your window of tolerance and allow you to be more resilient when stress arises. So if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the video. I really love to read the comments. You could also sign up for my newsletter to keep tabs. I'm going to be doing a lot more things like this. Plus, I already have lots of practices on my channel. And thank you.